Morning, everyone. We had a stirring address from President Zelensky earlier today that moved the Congress and I believe continued to move the country and the world to stand behind Ukraine in its struggle against Russia. And it's a recognition, as President Zelensky clearly indicated, this is about peace versus war. This is about democracy versus dictatorship. This is about the free world and freedom versus tyranny. It's about truth versus propaganda. And we're going to continue to stand behind the people of Ukraine until victory has been won. President Biden and House Democrats continue to get things done for everyday Americans. We passed the American Rescue Plan and recently celebrated the one-year anniversary of this incredibly important legislation when the American Rescue Plan was first enacted and when President Biden first took office. Less than 2 million Americans were fully vaccinated. Today, more than 250 million Americans are fully vaccinated, allowing us to return to some semblance of new normalcy. The economy was on the brink of collapse when the American Rescue Plan was enacted. Subsequent to passage of the American Rescue Plan, during President Biden's first 13 months, more than 7 million good-paying jobs have been created, a record in American presidential history. Fastest rate of economic growth in 40 years. Unemployment down to 3.8%, a pre-pandemic low. Wages are increasing. And notwithstanding the doom and gloom predictions from my Republican colleagues about spending on behalf of everyday Americans, the deficit was reduced by more than $350 billion. Democrats are the party of fiscal responsibility and the party that gets things done for everyday Americans. Why did Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans uniformly vote against the American Rescue Plan? What is their rationale? It saved the economy. It put shots in arms, money in pockets, kids back in school, and Democrats reduced the deficit. Are they just callous? Do they not care about everyday Americans? Their argument has now fallen apart. Supposedly, it was about fiscal responsibility. That was always a sham. They're the ones that regularly explode the deficit as Donald Trump did and increase the debt dramatically, in part by passing the GOP tax scam. So we passed the American Rescue Plan. We passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which will continue to create millions of good-paying jobs, fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, subways, buses, tracks, sewer and water systems, make sure there's clean water in every single community in America, as well as access to high-speed broadband. And now we've passed a transformative omnibus spending agreement that will continue to lift up everyday Americans. Democrats deliver and get things done. Republicans just lie. Lie about COVID, lie about the economy, and certainly lie about the results of the 2020 election. And now they're even lying about President Zelensky. President Zelensky is a hero, a freedom fighter, a patriot. He's not a thug. More on that later. I'm now pleased to yield to Vice Chair Pete Aguilar.
And so there'll be more on that later. Last week, as the chairman mentioned, we were incredibly pleased to pass government funding bill, but it took less than 48 hours after passage for Republicans to take credit for spending that dough. From New York to Michigan to Texas, House Republicans are touting the local projects that they opposed, just as they did with the bipartisan infrastructure law. Let me be clear. These projects deserve to be funded back in our communities, in their communities and in my community. But we worked incredibly hard, the Appropriations Committee, to make sure that we approved these projects in Democratic districts and in Republican districts. But for folks like Elise Stefanik, a member of Republican leadership, to turn around and to brag about funding and the 10 projects after voting against them just shows how broken the Republican Party is. And they need to be called out for it. Clearly, Democrats must have the right strategy for keeping the majority when Republicans want to take credit for the things that we do. They take credit for things that they vote against, whether it was the 2020 election was stolen to the level of dishonesty is staggering. We can't trust the Republican Party to govern if they can't be honest about these details to the American public. We'll continue to focus on the needs of the American public, funding the priorities of this country, aid to Ukraine, meeting the challenges of the pandemic. We'll do all of those things. And we look forward to working with colleagues who are reasonable to get these priorities accomplished. With that, we'll take some questions.
Questions? Eric?
The White House has started to warn about the effects of not getting additional COVID money, that they'd have to pull back on vaccines and testing and other things like that. What's the plan to get that money passed?
Well, as has been the case with the American Rescue Plan, as has been the case with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as has been the case with a spending agreement to provide for the needs of everyday Americans, House Democrats are going to do what is necessary to provide that additional relief that the White House indicates it needs in terms of resources to continue to stem the tide of the pandemic. We are in the position that we are in today because of President Biden's leadership in partnership with House Democrats and Senate Democrats, and not a single Republican voted to support the American Rescue Plan. And so we're going to get the job done as we continue to get the job done. We didn't have a caucus meeting today because we were hearing from President Zelensky, but the speaker, of course, is on the case, and we're going to make sure that we provide the COVID assistance necessary to continue to allow the American people to get through this pandemic.
I didn't really hear a plan there, or even a timeline. Want to try again?
The plan is that we always get it done.
Just to follow up on that, though, if you don't get it done.
First row. First row.
I mean, I think I have a similar
Yeah.
question. I mean, if you don't, Speaker Pelosi presented a plan and her own members rejected that plan, what is the new plan to get the COVID aid the White House is saying is that?
But we passed a $1.5 trillion spending agreement that contains so much good for the American people, and we were able to come together and get that done, in fact, in a bipartisan way. Now, my understanding is that it's March, and the White House has indicated to us that they've got funding to take us through September. It's March. I think that's 6 months. That's an eternity in Washington, D.C. We are going to get it done.
Can I ask you on a different question? Ukraine, a lot of members came out of the speech today. They were still against the no-fly zone, still against delivering MiGs to the country. I'm wondering if what you guys saw and heard today was not a red line for taking a measure such as those. Is there a red line where the U.S. does get to that point? Does that exist?
Pete, you want to address it? And I'll address it after Pete.
Sure. We want to make sure that they have the resources they need to protect themselves. We know that they are fighting for democracy. We want to make sure that they have the tools and the resources. $13 billion included in the package last year to help meet those needs. The president talking, I believe, later today about additional funding that has been repurposed. All of these things are helpful. From a perspective of red lines, what we want to be cautious about are the decisions before us while giving them the resources they need to defend themselves. They also talked about missile defense systems. Zelensky talked about missile defense systems. So we want to take in that feedback. But at this point, we want to hear what they need. We want to evaluate it. We want to work with the administration, and the administration will help guide the resources that we need. I don't think we need 535 voices around here trying to be Secretary of Defense, but I think it's fair to ask questions about what our policy is, how far are we going to go, and what more we need to give to them to help them protect democracy, while staying true to our NATO obligations and ensuring that we don't escalate this any more than it, from our perspective, from the defense side, more than is necessary.
Did he change either of your minds though on the airplanes or the no-fly zone?
Well, President Zelensky appeared to have presented an either-or scenario. He indicated in his remarks that he supports the establishment of a no-fly zone, but indicated in the alternative, providing Ukraine with enhanced missile defense systems would also help to stem the carnage that we are seeing. That's an opening to find common ground, particularly when you consider, as we understand it, that the carnage being witnessed in Ukraine right now is by and large not coming from Russian airplanes and from the Russian Air Force. It's coming from the ground and from missiles. And so the question is, what is the most efficient way to stop the carnage as we see it? And perhaps that's why President Zelensky talked about alternative ways to address the pain that the Ukrainian people are experiencing, while, of course, thanking President Biden for his leadership. Because what has been done is significant. We've provided Ukraine and their courageous military and citizens with the weapons necessary to mount an incredible defense, including javelins and stingers and other forms of lethal aid that is making a difference on the ground. We've provided them with intelligence information that has proven to be very helpful to the Ukrainian resistance. And we just authorized more than $13 billion. That's a record amount of assistance, which will include humanitarian aid, economic aid, as well as continued military aid. That is an important and strong step in the right direction. The American people are standing behind Ukraine.
Mr. Chair, just to get back to the COVID aid, obviously the hope has been to perhaps have a bill this week. So if it doesn't happen this week, when do you expect it to happen? Because it seems like you gave a lot of runway there. And then secondly, can you just comment with respect to the issues conference last week? Since then, we've seen several members contract COVID. Do you expect any concerns that the conference could have been a source for spread?
Yeah, it's with respect to the first question, it's my understanding that we have the resources necessary to provide the COVID assistance necessary, which includes vaccines as well as therapeutics, through September. It's March, and the only timeline that I can present is that the COVID assistance that is necessary will be done well in advance of the expiration of the aid and resources that we currently have. It will be done well in advance of September. With respect to the issues conference, it was wonderful to be back together in person, hundreds of people, members and staff gathering. In terms of COVID, certainly thankful that everyone who is COVID positive right now within the caucus, which I would point out as I understand it, is about 9 members, 5 of whom were present, 4 of whom were not. So COVID is still here, but we are learning to live with it. And I'm thankful that everyone who tested positive, 5 of whom were present, 4 of whom were not, and President Obama was not at the conference either, still with us, but we are learning to live with it in a way that will allow a return to normalcy, and that is a good thing. On the back.
Can you just give an update on where things stand about ending permanent normal trade relations with Russia and Belarus? Is that still going to be voted on this week? When can we expect that to happen?
It's not clear to me. You have to talk to Leader Hoyer or the speaker about sort of the schedule. This is being discussed. We're hopeful to be able to move forward in this area in a bipartisan way. If not, have a 4 corners agreement between the House and the Senate. Go back over to this side. Thanks.
At the issues conference, it seemed like some members were talking about the possibility of executive actions on some of these legislative issues that have been kind of stalled out. Is this some sort of recognition of the limits of what you're able to legislate right now?
I'm going to yield to Pete on this, but in any normal circumstance, having just accomplished the American Rescue Plan alone would be a tremendous victory for the American people. Or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act alone would be a tremendous victory for the American people, when for decades we've had Infrastructure Week every other week and nothing ever happened. And under President Biden's leadership, partnership with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer, House and Senate Democrats, we got it done for the American people, and we just delivered a historic spending agreement. So I'm confident that we can legislate because we have been legislating in real ways. That doesn't mean that there aren't circumstances where executive actions aren't appropriate. They are. That has always been the case with every administration. I think will continue to be so with the Biden administration.
Yeah, all I would add is, we all agree that there's no substitute to legislation and passing bills that become laws. That is how we solve issues. That is how our colleagues, that is how House Democrats want to solve issues like immigration, like climate change, all of these issues. But occasionally there will be needs to address this through executive action. And we are working with the administration to offer suggestions and ideas that could be helpful to address some of those issues. You heard from Chairman Ruiz that he'll continue to have conversations with the administration and make that public when it's appropriate. But I don't think that it should surprise anyone. Every administration takes executive actions. We feel that there are some areas that can and should be addressed through executive action that will deliver help to people. So we're not going to be shy about offering suggestions to do that. But we will work in partnership with the administration, and we'll work to address this as a family does to make sure that we're meeting the needs.
I'm sorry, I went to you already. Yeah.
Okay. So in the district that you're running for re-election in, sort of in addition to getting a high school that used to be a lot cooler than yours, you're going to get one of the most significant Russian and I believe Ukrainian populations in the country. Are you hearing from them? Are you talking to them? What are you hearing, and what is your message to them?
Well, in the district that I currently represent and have had the privilege of doing so for the last decade, I do represent the largest percentage of Russian-speaking immigrants from the former Soviet Union, many of whom are Jewish, than any other member of Congress in the country. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, who knew, right? What a great country, the United States of America. And it's an honor to represent such a robust community many of whom come from Ukraine, which is why we call parts of Brighton Beach Little Odessa. But I can tell you, I had the benefit of being at, a privilege of being at a rally that was held by Councilman Ari Kagan and others recently in Southern Brooklyn, and the community is united. Those from Ukraine, those from Belarus, like Council Member Ari Kagan, those from Russia, the community is united in defense of Ukraine. And they're thankful that the United States has stepped up in important and robust ways, and of course are urging the Congress and the administration in the country to continue to do so until victory has been won, until Ukraine has been liberated, until democracy and freedom and truth prevail.
I have kind of a lighter question about the Sunshine Protection Act, which I think someone unexpectedly passed the Senate yesterday by unanimous consent. I understand this came up in the House Democratic leadership meeting last night. Can you tell us anything about whether or not the House is going to take action on this, what the thinking is?
It was noted that the Senate has passed this legislation by unanimous consent. I guess that was unexpected because someone may have missed their moment in terms of being able to object. And it's wonderful to see under Leader Schumer that bills are moving out of the United States Senate. That is a credit to Leader Schumer. Multiple bills moving out of the United States Senate. In terms of this particular bill, sunshine legislation, as you've referred to it, I think it's an important step that we should take in the House of Representatives, but I look forward to hearing from other members of the caucus, some of whom have already publicly expressed their support for moving the legislation forward. Maybe I should yield to the gentleman from the Golden State to comment on the addition of more sunshine.
A lot of sunshine. A lot of sunshine. The Sunshine Caucus. Yeah, it was briefly mentioned. I think it just caught us all by surprise that the Senate actually produced something and sent it to us. Usually bills go the other way. So Chairman Pallone obviously has had a hearing on this in the past. We look forward to his thoughts in the Energy and Commerce Committee. There might be some additional ideas that members have, and we know that members will reflect their districts, and whether that is rural communities or whether that is communities who children are waiting at bus stops and wanting to make sure that there's daylight and that they're doing it in a safe way early in the morning. So there are ideas and thoughts, but clearly this is something I think needs to be addressed. I think the time has come, but I want to have respect for members' ideas and thoughts on how we get there and what the timing is to get there.
Last question. All right.